Welcome into the DAV Podcast, Episode 8, The Journey Ahead, talking about women veterans today. I'm Dan Klaskins here, along with Marine veteran Ashley Burns, and we're going to look at all the issues and challenges facing women veterans, hear from some great guests indeed, and dive into a lot of the issues facing our veterans as we do on each episode of the podcast. You can always subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and Stitcher. But Ashley, today, before we even get into this very important topic of women veterans, a big topic impacting the entire world right now, coronavirus. And I know there's a lot of veterans out there looking for some guidance during this outbreak.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's the forefront of everyone's mind right now is just trying to make sure that we keep ourselves healthy, we keep our families healthy. So I definitely think it would be remiss if we didn't at least mention here some information for veterans concerning the coronavirus outbreak. So what I want to just put out there is for veterans, if you know that you're not ill, but you have a medical appointment coming up, we advise you, and the VA has advised its patients to just use common sense. You know, we get it. Nobody wants to be sitting in a waiting room with sick patients and potentially increase their risk of exposure, potentially then risking their families and loved ones and coworkers to further exposure. So here are a few things that the VA has advised veterans about. First of all, if you're looking to go to an appointment just to renew a prescription, they're asking or advising that we call and check with our doctors to see if it's possible we can authorize those by a phone call or without coming in by just requesting the refill online. There are ways to do that. You can always reschedule your appointment if your issue isn't urgent. If you're not in a dire situation, you don't need to be seen, call and see if you can reschedule. Or you can request an online appointment via VA Health Chat or VA Video Connect. Those are two great options that don't require any personal social contact. Of course, don't cancel your appointment without letting the VA know first. Don't just be a no-show. That impacts other patients, but it's especially important if your appointment is related to an exam for your disability rating. You do not want to miss those. If you are truly ill and you need medical attention, keep your appointment, but of course, take the proper precautions, hand washing, covering your coughs and your sneezes, avoid touching your face. And, you want to minimize contact with other people or being out in public if you can at all help it. And then, of course, for those who believe they may possibly have been exposed to coronavirus, or if you believe that you're showing symptoms, it's okay to keep your appointments. Just make sure you call ahead to the doctor's office and let them know what you're experiencing, all your symptoms before you make the drive out and arrive.
Definitely all great advice there. And it is a very interesting and unique time. So you want to stay up with the latest, and we'll certainly want to follow us on social media, on Twitter at DAVHQ, our Facebook page, Instagram as well. And really, those are places you should be following anyway to keep up with all the important issues facing veterans. But Ashley, great insight there. Appreciate that. And here we go. Talking about this urgent issue of coronavirus, and transitioning now to another big legislative issue here for DAV, and a growing problem for the VA in itself is women veterans, the growing population, the journey ahead, the title of our episode today. We've got some great guests lined up to dive into the topic, including Dr. Linda Davis. She's the VA Chief Veterans Experience Officer, an Army veteran herself. Our National Legislative Director, Joy Elam, she'll join in to talk about some of our latest legislative actions around this issue. And we're also going to hear from a woman ranger from the National Guard, Staff Sergeant Jessica Smiley, a fantastic story indeed. But Ashley, as a woman veteran yourself, this is, I know, an issue that really speaks to you very highly. And I know you're very passionate about it and the work that DAV is doing around the issue. Let's just set the stage here a little bit for some of the latest legislative actions and some of the true challenges of this growing population and how they can fit into the VA's sometimes antiquated policies here.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. We're talking about the fastest growing population within VA is women veterans. And unfortunately, we are sort of the round peg in a square hole, or am I thinking that backwards? Square peg, round hole, where we're talking about we're sort of put into the system that by and large for many, many decades has been catered to male patients. And so there are going to be areas where there are gaps, where there are things that we're missing out on, simple basic things like maternity and obstetric care, proper screenings for breast health. Those are things that they are part of our normal care, our annual care routine, part of our basic health needs that aren't necessarily being met all the time. VA has actually done great work in some of those areas, including breast health screenings. They actually, I believe, are ahead of the private sector in getting their patients screened. So there are some areas where they've made a lot of headway, which is great. So yeah, our 2014 and our 2018 reports, Women Veterans, The Long Journey Home, and Women Veterans, The Journey Ahead, they have a multitude of areas where we identify things that are missing, areas where we could stand for improvement in legislative and policy changes. It gives a host of recommendations. And then, of course, that follow-on report circles back to where the 2014 report left off, covers how far we've come, what work there still is left to do. So access barriers, maternity, obstetric care, breast health, sexual assault, these are all things that are very important. And DAV has been a lead on women veterans issues for a long time and have advocated for a number of legislative and policy changes to ensure that we're breaking down those barriers that may keep this population from accessing the benefits that they earned through their military service. And also just making sure that we're recognizing women veterans service, because a lot of women, as we know, we keep saying this, but it's really important that people understand some women don't recognize themselves as veterans. And so we need to make sure that they know what they've earned and that they're getting the care and benefits that came through that service. Our own DAV National Legislative Director, Joy Elam, as you mentioned, has been out in the front on this effort. She's a woman veteran herself, and she joined our own Matt Saintsing to kind of give us an update on what's going on in Washington and to give us a little bit of insight on why it's so important that we continue this fight.
So the most recent one was looking at reproductive health access for women veterans, residential treatment programs, and economic opportunities for women veterans. Okay. And that, rounded out or kicked off another series of roundtable discussions. During 2019, they also met about military sexual trauma, about the End Harassment campaign that's underway at VA, culture issues that women veterans face, and just an overall series of issues that women veterans have brought up at these meetings that they want addressed. Big legislative push was the hearings that were conducted. There were 3 of them. One was on economic opportunities for women veterans. This was all in 2019. There was a legislative hearing that there were 17 women veterans bills that were considered, and that culminated into the introduction of the Deborah Sampson Act, or HR 3224, which is a collection of all of those 17 bills that were considered after they were amended and then captured in that.
And my final question here, why is there even a need for a Women Veterans Task Force?
Well, I think you hit on it exactly, that originally military was very male-dominated. It's just been within the last 2 decades. While women have always served, which we know, we have this extremely, growing population of women veterans who have served during wartime service. And we know that they're experiencing the same military impact of on their physical and mental health. And when they've come back to VA, they need VA, and those programs and services were really developed for men, because the majority of the 7 million users within the VA is still predominantly men. Right. So program offices have really tailored a lot of those programs to male veterans. We've challenged them within our reports to think about each program and service office. How are we serving, are we meeting the needs of women veterans in their transition to have a successful transition? And that was what our reports really highlighted, that across the range of services that are offered, VA's got great programs for veterans, but some of the nuances in those programs just didn't shine through for women. For example, got a great homeless program, But can veterans take advantage of all those services because they often were the sole caretakers of dependent children?
Mm-hmm.
So could they get housing? VA is not allowed to provide for a homeless veteran for their children. So they have to work extra hard to look at those programs and say, well, we want women to be able to take advantage of this. We know that they have higher rates of homelessness among women veterans. Why aren't they coming to VA? Or why is this happening? They need to look at whether it's their women veterans program, women's health program. They didn't have enough providers initially that had FTEs in women's health. And that's nobody's fault. It's just a fact.
It's a consequence of the system.
Right. All of a sudden, we're seeing an influx of women. VA did a big outreach on wartime service, or for wartime veterans, to say, hey, you can come to VA if you feel you need care, and here's all the things we offer. So we saw a tripling or 175% increase in the number of women coming to VA over a 15-year period.
Wow.
So that was from 2000 to 2015.
Oh, wow.
So they went from about 160,000 women veterans in the whole system to now we're at about 500,000, a little bit over 500,000. But still, that's a small sliver when you put them across the system of 7 million users.
Right.
So you have to pay attention to a group that you are there to care for, who deserve equal access, quality care, and gender specific care and gender sensitive care that is going to meet the same recovery model or the PTSD program or homeless program, whatever it is. You want to make sure it's going to work for them as well. And so I think that's why we've continued the spotlight on it. And they serve side by side. They're doing the same things in the military now. It's open to all
the special schools and assignments.
Right. And we've seen from these wars over the past 20 years, they have limb loss, they have, amputations, they have traumatic brain injury, they have burns, they have all the same things. But if you go in to be served by VA and they're like, well, for prosthetics, we've just never served a woman with this type of amputation, and we're going to have to kind of rethink about, oh, gee, you're having babies, and how does that impact your prosthetic leg?
Right.
The weight fluctuation, or what you want as a veteran, maybe a more natural looking limb than the ones now that for male veterans are like fine
Cyborgs.
With the right. So it's just it's those types of things. They deserve that acknowledgement of their military service. We know the culture issues have been somewhat problematic for women, where they get this not recognition as a veteran. When, the Mr.
Where's
Don't
your
call me
husband?
Mr. Where's your husband? And all those things are changing, but it's taken VA to really have programs like campaigns in place, poster campaigns, just reminding their staff, educating them on what the experience of a woman veteran in the military was, and then ensuring they don't say Mr., a simple thing, but that for people, for a lot of women veterans, are saying, I feel like I've been overlooked, that they just don't recognize what I did in the military, or I'm not believed, or they just have no concept. You were in combat?
Yeah.
What do you mean? So I think the combination of things and harassment, or the harassment issues that have come up, again, some veterans may not even realize that by saying, hey, you look great, or something, is really an affront and is taken in a way that's not appreciated and may cause someone not to get their care at VA. So all these things matter, and the attention on these issues matter, and that's why DAV is really, our resolution from our membership is that we want to make sure women veterans have equal access to the same programs and services as male veterans throughout the system. And that means sometimes they got to be tailored to their unique needs. Some of the program may work, but what are the barriers to care? One of the things that came up early in some of the research was women veterans are often the caretaker of their small children, and they need mental health services, and they're going in for a weekly mental health.
Can't always bring a child.
Right, you can't bring your child with it. So the child care issue came up.
Yeah. Other
barriers have been identified, and so they're just trying to look at, well, why do we have differences in this population, and what is it? What can we do just to make these services more accessible?
Always good hearing from both Joy and Matt, and obviously some important issues DAV's tackling there. By the way, be sure to check out our resource page at dav.org women-veterans. There you'll find the 2014 and 2018 reports that Ashley spoke of, some news and testimony, a toolkit, issue briefs, and all the current legislation out there that we're tackling on behalf of these veterans. And let's now talk and welcome in our second guest of the program here today. And this one, a very insightful guest as well. It's Dr. Linda Davis, currently serving as the VA's Chief Veterans Experience Officer. The Army veteran sat down with DAV's Mary Deaver at DAV's most recent national convention to talk about the challenges facing the ever-growing women veteran population, the plan of action the VA is taking to combat these issues, and how DAV and other veteran service organizations can help in this fight.
Well, thank you so much for coming and taking the time to talk to our membership and our women veterans and our supporters about what's happening today in that area. It's a big issue and we're very focused on it, so thank you for taking the time. As a woman veteran yourself, what do you think the VA experience is like for women veterans today?
The VA experience overall for women veterans is improving significantly, and I can say that because I have the data to prove it, that we're seeing in the way we receive feedback from women veterans each and every day on the service they've received, particularly from important areas like outpatient health care. We're seeing increases in their ratings on the effectiveness, the ease of using the services, and the emotional engagement of our employees, which is in fact increasing the trust that they have with the VA overall. That's not to say that there isn't a need to continue to improve, but we are pleased that compared to 2 years ago, that the women's trust and use of the VA is increasing.
Thank you for that, for all you're doing for that as well. What improvements are you working on now?
We're focusing our initial intention for women veterans on the health care that women veterans receive. We're working closely with the Office of Women's Health at VHA and also the Office of Women Veterans in the Office of the Secretary to study the experience of women veterans. So we have done journey maps with focus groups of the experience of women veterans when they use outpatient services, when they are discharged from the hospital, when they use inpatient services, when they're using telehealth services. So they can tell us the moments that matter the most to them. Once we understand those, and we've had a report on it, in fact, that distills that information, once we understand it, then we're able to take action with the VHA to specifically improve the services that is delivered by providers in things like our women's health clinic. It enables us to hire more women as OBGYN physician. It enables us to do new innovative programs like our programs for women who are pregnant and about to give birth and to have baby showers at the VA. It enables us to ensure that we have a private waiting area for women who are receiving care in either our health facilities or perhaps coming in to talk to a mental health provider and they may want to be sharing something about MST. It allows us to understand the different experiences of women and what matters to them.
Well, I know that you're making a big impact, so thank you.
That is our intention.
How can VA work with VSOs like DAV to improve services and the culture at VA to be more inclusive of women veterans?
We can't change the culture of the VA to be more customer service centric, which is the Secretary's priority goal, without including our veteran service organizations and nonprofit organizations and even our corporate partners. So we turn to the VA and learn from the reports that you have recently done on the experience of women veterans. I think you have over 50 recommendations in that report. It's impressive. Some of them we've already begun to implement. Accountability for leadership is just one example, but we need to work with you on ensuring that your women members are included in, for instance, our focus groups. So we're getting the voice of women veterans who are diverse in their own background, who are different eras, who are different geographically. Our veteran service organizations like DAV help us thus for specific distilling the information they get in their research and their reports, and then also helping us to reach out to women veterans, whether it's in a focus group or whether it's sharing information like we did today. Today we shared information on our welcome kit, on our quick start guides of how to get access to benefits, and you all will be able to then share that through all of the ways in which you do research and outreach to your veteran members, and that's invaluable.
That relationship is essential.
It is.
Sure.
It is.
What are your biggest challenges helping women veterans and improving the lives of women veterans, and what are your greatest successes?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is to making sure that we're reaching women veterans who are not enrolled in the VA. As was mentioned today during our panel, women veterans often do not identify as being a veteran. Those of us like myself, I'm not retired, and so we have these misunderstandings that you have to have been a certain type of veteran or served a certain length in order to be considered a veteran, to be eligible for any benefits, or just to affiliate with the VA at all for things like health care. We need to help women who have served and worn the uniform, first of all, to know that they are appreciated for that service. If they never use the VA, they're still respected and appreciated for the fact that at one point they raised their right hand and they promised to serve their country and in fact to die for their fellow citizens. That distinguishes those women from anybody else, to me. Then we have to help them understand what they're eligible for based on the time of service and their means of service, and also their need. And if there's any reason they can't qualify or don't choose to use the VA, we want to make sure that they're connected to other community-based resources or other resources the DAV might have that are state or local or other nonprofits or other VSOs. So DAV is an essential partner in that. That outreach is so key.
As a woman veteran yourself, what message do you have for your fellow women veterans?
First of all, thank you. Second of all, be proud of your service. And third, be loud. Make sure that you speak up, usually not for yourself, but speak up for other women veterans and for all veterans. When you see something, say something. If you see something that could be improved in your community or at a VA facility, let us know how we can help you and help your fellow veterans receive absolutely the consistent highest quality care and benefits that you have earned and deserve.
Be proud and be loud. I absolutely love that. And that is, I think, a huge factor in how we'll continue to move the ball forward in equalizing the care that women and other minority veteran populations will receive. And it's also critical to combating the rates of sexual harassment at VA facilities. Unfortunately, right now, 1 in 4 women report harassment from other veterans while seeking care at VA facilities. 1 in 4.
That's just amazing to put into perspective.
I know. I mean, it's to think that many people are having an issue, that may be an element that's keeping women from wanting to access their health care that they earned. And I think it's really important to note every single VA patient has a role in this. Yes, we believe that VA has a role in leading that culture change, but every single VA patient has a role to play in creating that welcoming and safe place for receiving care for every veteran. So it's staff, it's patients, it's every single one of us that sets foot into a VA facility. We must all be respectful of each other, and we have to say something when we see wrongdoing. But now, looking into the future, today's female soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen, they are tomorrow's veterans, and DAV is trying to create a better future for them when they leave service with the work that we're doing today. But it's important to note that they're out there blazing some trails of their own right now, which is always very exciting to see. So here again, once more, is Matt Saintsing. with Staff Sergeant Jessica Smiley, who is the first woman in the Army National Guard to earn that coveted Army Ranger tab.
And so tell me about how you became to have a Ranger tab on your shoulder. I can only imagine, did someone knock on your door and say, so, do you want to go to Ranger school?
No, so I've always kind of tried to push myself to not only meet the standard, but exceed the standard and push my limits, not just for myself, but to benefit the soldiers that are beneath me and beside me. And when this opportunity came available, I thought, what better way to develop myself as a leader than to go to, the Army's premier leadership school and test myself, and then also develop more leadership styles and traits to bring to the soldiers surrounding me.
Yeah. How did you prepare for the course, and how long did you prepare for the course?
So physically, I've been preparing for the course for probably about the past year and a half, taking into consideration all of the different events and the prolonged, rucking and, stuff like that I would have to go through. So I didn't want to just jump straight into it. So I kind of took a little bit longer than most people, but it's been about a year and a half that I've been preparing physically and mentally to go through the course.
Have you been a lot of ruck marches, a lot of cardio, a lot of running?
It's been pretty much a culmination of everything. So I've incorporated ruck marches, running, as well as weightlifting to try and build that well-developed, well-rounded base. That way I could kind of take anything that was thrown at me.
Yeah. And so what were some of the most grueling parts of the school?
So I would have to say definitely in mountains, like scaling the mountains with the heavy rucks that we did have to carry. That would probably be the most grueling part.
And are you airborne qualified?
I am.
So did you jump into Florida?
Negative. We only jumped in Darby.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So you joined the ranks of about 42 women by my count, and do you feel somewhat of a trailblazer for other soldiers who also happen to be women?
I don't think that we're necessarily trailblazing. I think that there's plenty of women that have been able to do it for a really long time that we're just now, I guess, being given the opportunity to showcase the fact that we can do it. I just happen to be able to go before some of the other women.
Yes, almost like a timing thing is what you're saying.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah. Did you ever think about quitting in the course at all?
There were several times I thought about it, but then I told myself that I would quit the next morning.
Yeah. And can I ask what was going through your head or mind, or what was the event?
It would have to be probably when it was at its coldest. When we were in mountains, it was at its coldest and it was raining. And it was a time where I thought that I could just quit. I essentially wouldn't get any repercussions because I didn't need the school. And then in the back of my mind, I said, you know what? I'll quit tomorrow morning. Let me just make it through this night, and I'll quit in the morning. And then when the morning came, it was just time to get back on whatever task we had, and I completely forgot about quitting.
Yeah, the friends of mine from the Army that have been to Ranger, I never went to Ranger school, but the friends of mine who did, it's similar, where they say, I can quit right now and get hot chow, and I don't need this, but I want it. And I think it's the people who want it at the end of the day are the ones who could get to call themselves Rangers. So you've joined, I don't want to say a fraternity of people, but a special club within the Army. What transferable skills did Ranger School teach you that you're going to take to your unit and in your career in the National Guard? So
I guess the biggest thing is different leadership styles. So we all have one individual leadership style that we tend to lean towards, and we sometimes shy away from the other ones. But being in the extreme conditions that we were in, you had to be comfortable leading soldiers with different backgrounds and different ways that they reacted to leadership styles. So some individuals needed abrasive, communication, to where others needed a little bit more of a soft-spoken leader. So the ability to learn those styles and apply them all within a couple of weeks really helped to develop me and how I can assist soldiers going forward.
Gotcha. And were there a lot of special tactics that you had to learn either on the fly or prepare for? Because I know it's a small unit tactics thing, and I know the soldiers that come from infantry or other combat arms kind of have a leg up than to other MOSs.
So I spent several months trying to learn as much as I could prior to going into the school. But this is also where the camaraderie of the individuals in your squad or your platoon came in. So maybe some areas where I didn't know the intricate details of the tactics, other individuals that were there with me that had a better grasp on it helped me learn and remember those small, intricate details.
Do you know how many people you started with and how many end up graduating?
I do not know the exact number.
No worries, I can figure that out. And forgive the question, but I have to ask: was there any sexism or any other gender discrimination that you experienced either in school or leading up to it?
No, there was not. I was treated like every other Ranger student, Ranger candidate that was there. We weren't male or female. We were Ranger students trying to accomplish the same task and end up on Victory Pond.
I think when I read about this, I think that's going to be something refreshing for some people to read, and quite frankly, the way it should be. So Becky, your unit back home, I mean, I assume they were very supportive. Your first sergeant, your commander.
Yes, they are.
And did they give you any kind of special time away from training to prepare for this, or was this all on your own training schedule?
This was essentially kind of on my training schedule. I woke up super early in the morning and hit the ground running, or stayed late at night at the gym to put in the extra hours to be able to bring my body up to the physical level that I needed to be able to go to school and be successful.
How did you prepare mentally?
Mentally, it was a lot of self-reflection, as well as developing a really good support system for those days when, during training, I wanted to stop because training was hard. So, if I couldn't complete the training, how was I actually going to be able to go to the school? So, having a good support system and people, essentially driving and pushing home the point that, I've put so much into it was more mentally refreshing and mentally preparing than really anything else. What
advice would you give to anyone who's thinking or on their way to Ranger School?
I would tell them to go for it, to understand that you're going to dedicate a lot of hours to physical and mental preparation, and then when you get there, give 100% and never look back and have any regrets.
Is there any advice you'd give specifically to women who are preparing to go?
I would say that I don't think any particular advice that I have for women. It would just be individuals in general that are going. Mm-hmm. Dedicate the training, dedicate the hours and the manpower to it, and then go and get it done.
What's next on the horizon for you after some well-earned rest?
Honestly, at this point in time, I don't have anything right up front that I have planned yet, but I can tell you in the next week or so, I'm going to start looking at and doing some career evaluation where I want to go.
Gotcha. And my last question for you here is, did you ever think this was possible? If you've been in the Army for 13 years, you joined at a time when they didn't have, obviously, combat roles open for women and now in these specialized schools, and now that's changed. So on some level, you have to be excited and maybe a bit surprised.
So if you'd asked me 13 years ago if I thought this would have been possible, I probably would have told you no, that I hoped it would have been, but that I didn't plan on it happening. Now I'm excited that it did, and I'm excited to see where we go from here as we progress.
Awesome. Well, hey, I really appreciate the time you've made, and thanks again. See ya.
What a fascinating story it was of Jessica Smiley, and certainly all of our guests today offering some vital insight into women veterans, the journey ahead we've talked about here on the podcast. We're always talking about all kinds of interesting issues that are facing veterans, and really talking about the mission of DAV and how we help 1 million veterans every single year. So we encourage you to subscribe to the podcast. You can do it on iTunes, Spotify. We've got it out there really anywhere you listen to it, Stitcher. And of course, you can find it dav.org/podcast, the page where you can see all the podcasts, all the episodes ahead. And Ashley, obviously, this was a great topic. A lot of great topics we talked about, some good ones ahead as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward, we're going to be taking a look at alternative therapies for veterans and the VA's whole health program, which has been offering patients a new way of approaching their overall wellness as well as pain management, which is a huge issue as we're combating this opioid crisis in America. And I've got to say that the data that they've been tracking on this program's success is very impressive. So we'll share that in an upcoming episode. And then we also have a really cool piece coming up about MDMA, which is more commonly known as the street drug ecstasy or Molly, and how it's showing huge breakthrough potential as a treatment for PTSD.
Wow. That is going to be some good stuff there. And as I said, you can find all the other topics we've already covered, dav.org/podcast. If you're a veteran that needs help, you can find it there too. Find out where the local office is near you to get your benefits and more. Just go to dav.org. You can also donate if you'd like to help us help the 1 million veterans each year. All of it there. And Ashley, good stuff as always. Looking forward to another episode, many more episodes ahead here in 2020. For Ashley Burns and all of us here at DAV, I'm Dan Klaskins. Thanks for listening. Join in next time right here on the DAV Podcast.